Boys, first I want you to know that I was a Scoutmaster for 47 years, and there's nothing I love more than Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. Because I think the scouting program is the best program in the world to prepare you for this life. How old, what's the average age? About,
7 or 8.
How old?
7 or 8.
7 or 8.
Second
All right.
graders, sir, second graders.
Now, let me ask you a question. Have you heard of the word dictator? What's a dictator? I'm sorry, say it louder, but my old ears, you know.
I've heard it before.
What do you think a dictator is? Well, if you didn't really think about it before, dictator is a man who, by himself, thinks he knows how to run the world, or a country, or even a little state or county now and then. And a dictator is the ultimate boss. You know what that means? The boss is the man who can say anything he wants, and everybody has to do what he says. Okay? A dictator in history, now I'm going back to the history books. A dictator is the man who runs a country. Now in the old days, they used to call them, they had all kinds of names for them. They called them kings, sultans, they called them czars, they called them pharaohs in ancient history. But the point was this: everybody in the world, up until 1775, lived under a dictator. You got that? That meant the dictator and all the people under him had to do what they were told. Would you like that? Would you like to live under a dictator? No. In 1775, before that, all the world was run by dictators. A bunch of people in this country, the United States of America, at a place in Massachusetts called Concord Bridge, said, we don't like this idea. Here's what happened. The British, who owned this country at that time, they were colonies, the British were going to disarm the Americans, take away their guns so that they couldn't revolt. And the British sent a whole regiment, that's 700 people, 700 soldiers, went to Concord Bridge to disarm the American soldiers. And 71, that's the number, 71 Americans now stood up to 700 British soldiers, and when the British commander said, lay down your arms and disperse, you rebels, the Americans said, excuse my language, go to hell. That was the beginning of people who said, we don't want to live under dictators anymore. We want to be free men. We want to be able to tell ourselves what we want to do and what our families want to do. It took 7 years of a war. The American Revolution took 7 years, but finally, a handful of Americans, compared to the British were the superpower of the day. The Americans took them on and beat them, and started the first democratic country that the world has ever seen. And you, today, are the inheritors of that country where you're a free man, and you can conduct your life the way you want to, and you have something to say who the dictator, who the leader is going to be. Now, what did it take in between? Every time There are other people in the world who don't believe that there should be freedom among the people. And your country, the United States of America, has always had to stand up and fight to keep America free. Now, boys, are you with me so far?
Yeah.
You understand? Okay. There were big battles way back, 1914, World War I, and then the one I was in, 1942. 3 dictators in the world, Mussolini in Italy, Hirohito in Japan, and Adolf Hitler in Germany, were going to take over the world. They said, never mind this freedom business, we're going to take over the world, and we're going to see to it that we tell people what to do. There were a lot of countries in the world who said, we don't agree with that, but we had to fight. War is a terrible thing, boys. A lot of people get hurt. A lot of people die. And a lot of people get an experience that they never forget. The particular battle that I was in, the background is the war is on, Hitler seems to be winning, he's taken over most of Europe, he's taken over most of Russia, the Japanese have taken most of the islands in the Pacific, and so on. But in general, what you need to know is that they were winning until the United States of America got in the war and said, hey, we're going to do something about it. The year was 1941. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, which is where they sunk a lot of Navy ships and killed a lot of Americans. But that brought us full scare into the war. And I was a 16-year-old boy in high school, and we said, what are you doing? We didn't do anything to you. How come you're attacking us? But they were attacking us because they believed dictatorship was the way to go. We were democracy people who said, no, there should be freedom in the world. And so we had to fight. Now, what does it take to fight a war? Guts, if that word means anything to you. But much more important, what you need to know is the people who believe in their hearts that freedom is the way to go. Freedom have to be willing to fight for it. Now, as a 16-year-old kid, I went to volunteer. They said, go home, kid. They said you had to be 18 before you could go to the service. And I went home and I graduated from high school. And then they said, you have to wait until 2 weeks after you're 18 before you can commit. And so 2 weeks after I was 18, I went in. And they started giving you all kinds of tests to see what you want. I wanted the infantry. The infantry, they take the biggest beating. But they're the ones that are in the middle of the fight. They're the ones that are at the beginning of the fight, and they're the ones that are at the end of the fight. And infantry are the backbone of the army. All the other organizations are to help the infantry get to the battle. Because until the infantryman digs a hole in the ground and gets in it and puts the bayonet on the end of his rifle and says, I'm staying here, you haven't captured anything. So I went into the infantry. And they give you 19 weeks of training. They show you how to shoot guns and how to protect them and how to bayonet the people and that. They show you all the ways to curtly inside, and then we're ready to go into a regular infantry outfit. When I got to the infantry outfit, they started maneuvers here and maneuvers there, and I kept saying, when are we going to get into the fight? Finally, one day, they said, we're going to have a demonstration. All you boys sit out in the field here. So we all sat down in the field. And out of the sky came 3 C-47 airplanes. These airplanes flew over the field, and then the doors opened, and then jumped out of the airplane with parachutes. That was brand new in the Army in my day. We all looked at these men and watched them come down out of the sky and land on the ground and roll up their parachutes, and they ran up in front of us and they lined up and they said, this is the parachute corps of the United States Army. We want volunteers. Who wants to volunteer for the parachute troops? You have to have had infantry training. You got to have had advanced infantry weapons, all your weapons. We all had that. But now when they said, who wants to volunteer? We said, jump out of an airplane with a parachute. And then the man said, and there's $50 extra a month jumping. And that's how I got into the parachute training. Parachute training was magnificent. In the infantry, you walk 30 miles, in the paratrooper, you walk 50 miles. In the infantry, you walk every place. In the paratrooper, you run every place. And we had jump training and all kinds of new weapons and machine guns and so on and so on. And after you finish your training, you get your paratroop wings, and then you have boots. You're allowed to blouse your pants. Only paratroopers were allowed to do that. And then you went overseas. Now when we got to England, in the war, it looked bad, but America was getting ready. You've heard of D-Day, Normandy? America was getting ready to invade Europe. The Germans had had all of it for 4 years now, and they had all kinds of guns and things they were preparing along the shore. The paratroops were going to be jumping over the sea. All the fortifications that the Germans had on the beaches to stop the infantry boys coming out of the beach. The paratroops were going to jump on the other side of the line and catch them in between. And boys, I don't want to bore you with too much of this stuff, but it happened. 2 whole divisions of paratroops, the 101st Airborne Division, that's my outfit, and the 82nd Airborne Division jumped behind the enemy lines, and between them and the guys coming up the beaches, you've heard of the D-Day jumps and the beaches, squeezed the Germans in between, knocked them off. Now we're on the way, going up through France, going into North Germany to try to end the war. Again, I don't want to throw too much at you, but what I'm trying to describe is what it takes to keep a country free. You've got to be willing to fight, and fight under any conditions, and you've got to be willing to believe in your heart that this country is unique, it's special, and it's worth fighting for. Right near the end of the war, again, where I was involved, the Germans made a last push in the Bulge. They call it the Battle of the Bulge. Maybe you've heard of it. But one more time, they started through to take Antwerp, split the British and American armies, and get all the food, gasoline, and equipment we had in Antwerp, and they would have prolonged the war. A bunch of Americans, the 101st Airborne Division, were sent to a little town called Bastogne, that the Germans had to take if they wanted to get to Antwerp. town had 5 roads, railroads onto it. Was vital if they were going to take airplane. And the Army sent the 101st Airborne Division, my division, into Bastogne. They said, hold it. Hold it. Don't let them get by. Because if they get there into it, the war's going to last another 2 or 3 years. We were 1 parachute division. The Germans had 8 German divisions around Bastogne. 3 of them were Panzer divisions. You know what Panzer divisions are?
They're giant.
Tanks at a boy. 3 of the tank divisions. They were around Bastogne. And they started pounding us. Again, what I want to say to you is this. Battles are not won necessarily by who had the most men there, who had the most equipment, who had the most... The Germans had people over the air, they had everything. We were 1 division against 8 of them, but they never set a foot in battle. Because we believe in our hearts, America is worth fighting for. America has got to stay free. And I don't care what you throw at us. We will do it. It cost a lot. It cost a lot of men. But we held it. And the funny thing was General Patton and his armies came through. They built a siege around us, and they sent us a picnic and compartment. Boys, this is just one of the battles, you know, hundreds of battles like that were taking place all over the world, with the Marines on the island and so on and so on. I'm not trying to tell you that, you know, this was the most magnificent thing in the world. It was one of the battles that had to be fought to keep this country free so that you today can inherit a country where you're free to do what you want to do. Boys, the world is a dangerous place. There are lots of people out there who don't agree with us that freedom is the best way to go. These people are willing to fight to prevent us from staying free. And unfortunately, you, my young friends, are not facing a peaceful world. You're facing a dangerous world. And you have got to be ready, like we were, to take on the job if it comes. The reason we're always willing to take on the job is because we believe the most wonderful way to live is in a free country. And I hope that it doesn't happen. But if it does, you've got to be ready to do what we and all the other people did to keep this country where it is today. Okay? You think it's worthwhile fighting for?
Yes.
Yeah. And if the time comes, you're going to stand up and take on the enemy if he has to be taken on?
Yes.
How do you begin doing that? Pay attention to your parents. Pay attention to your teachers. Pay attention to all the things that are going on in this country so that you can stay smart, physically fit, ready, and with a good background, because your parents and your teachers and the country only want the best for you. Are you with that?
Yes.
Are you with that?